Hello, and thanks for joining Southeast Speaks, a work of the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. Once a week, we meet with students, faculty, alumni, and friends who support the work of training gospel preachers. Enjoy today's discussion. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hi, this is Southeast Speaks, a work of the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. I'm Greg Wanderman, the Director of Development, and I'm here today with Bill Bryant. Bill is a graduate of the East Tennessee School of Preaching and Missions, as we formerly were known. In fact, one of the earliest graduates, right?
That's correct. They started the school in the spring of 71, and I began attending in August of 71, 50 years ago this month.
All right. And Bill, as we celebrate our 50th year of work, Bill's been here almost the whole time.
One way or the other.
So Bill was one of our great alumni, and also you are on the faculty as well. You teach the evangelism class here.
One of the greatest blessings of my life, being able to be here to do that.
Well, it was a huge blessing of mine when I was here as a student to have you for that class, and so this is just a wonderful treat for me to have you in with us today.
Well, thank you.
I want to just get the background stuff out of the way. So you are the minister at the Wooddale Church of Christ.
Well, we moved here in December of 1999. It was formerly known then as the Alt Road Church of Christ. We moved here with the intention of being able to relocate. They had bought property in 94, began making payments on it out on Asheville Highway, where a lot of the members lived. And my wife was from that community, and she thought, wouldn't it be great to go back home and be able to help get them moved out there, relocated? So finally got out there in December of 2007. We became officially known as the Wooddale Church of Christ. So formerly Alt Road, now Wooddale, and been that way since.
Okay. And so it's... I guess you also came from close to my old stomping grounds over there in Memphis. I guess you moved over here from South Haven, right?
I did. I had the privilege of working with B.J. Clark, the fine congregation and elders there from 95 to 99, and then left there to come home.
And that wasn't a direct route for you either, I guess. You have one of the most interesting, what you call your Jonah story, I guess, from becoming a graduate to coming into full-time preaching.
It's different. I wouldn't advise it for most people, but I guess the Lord knew what He was doing. But
tell us about that. Tell us about your sort of journey of why you wanted to become a preacher and how you became a preacher.
Well,
it's such a great story.
I grew up here at Carnes, and I was privileged. Our family moved here in June of 1960. I was 8 years old, and pretty much adopted by the congregation. Then my parents weren't that faithful in attendance. And when we moved into the community, a neighbor saw all those kids run around the backyard, and he finally, after a lot of badgering and coaxing, and talked my parents, and at least let them take the oldest three who could read to the services. And so it took 5 years for my father and mother were brought back. They were baptized when I was a small child or baby, and then they finally, in October '65, got back started. So for 5 years, most of the way we got here was people who would pick us up and bring us here.
Oh, wow.
And so being raised up in Carnes and watch the church grow and prosper.
And just seeing that sort of church evangelism
yes.
Right off the bat.
You couldn't have, I mean, being a product of door knocking, in the literal sense, it certainly made it easy for me. And then became a Christian there in October. The day after my dad was restored, I was baptized in a gospel meeting. With a preacher who had been there initially and came back. Hugh Fulford was his name. Some of the people have been around the
news.
Yeah, he's a great. I think he's still alive, but what a great man he was. And the gospel worked. I was there, did pretty well in class, but then grew a lot. After I became a Christian, a guy by the name of George Wheaton, who was a superintendent of Bull Run Steam Plant, busy guy, had a bunch of girls, but he was the deacon in charge of young people. And it wasn't my idea. He said, you're going to be preaching. On the fifth Sunday night of the month, it was customary for the young men at Carnes to be given an opportunity. And I got up and got my first opportunity, made so by George and my father, and preached probably the fastest conversion sermon on the book of Acts known. And I think it was Brother Huber afterwards said, man, you preach fast. A little help, you could preach the Old New Testament 30 minutes. And I thought, I'll never have to do that again. And I did. They kept having me come back again and again through high school, and And so I got a lot of opportunities to preach and encourage. I had mentors there who got me involved, and I was active. And so I went to UT for a while in the accounting major, and then when the school started, I thought that's what I want to do. It seemed to be just the logical progression.
Just had that desire in your heart.
Desire, raised up by a lot of good men. They would have world mission workshops in the 60s and sit at the feet of some of the best missionaries the church had at that day that come to there regularly. And I got the best feeding of my soul a young person could ever have. And so it was encouraged, to be active in the church. And so when they started the School of Preaching, it seemed to be a natural fit. I didn't want to wait. And my dad encouraged me, and my mother encouraged me, and so I did. And so I went through 2 years and
graduated in 73.
Graduated in 73, in the summer of 73. And I'd worked my whole second year of school at a congregation near Monticello, Kentucky. And so I moved up there and started preaching. And then life hit. Some of the problems or storms of life that I'd heard about, I got to put into practice, and I didn't handle them very well. And trying to keep up with that, I just woke up in the Navy.
Woke up in the
Navy, and that's when I lost my name. I was named after my dad, William or Bill. And then after that, it so disheartened my dad that in all the correspondence and all the communication, my new name was Jonah. And so he had hopes that one day that submarine would spit me out on dry land. In January of 82, it did in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I was going to, doing military guy in the daytime at the federal building. And then at night, I was going to school, University of Cincinnati, working on some more college. And then in August of that year, 4 elders of the church came by and said, "We need you to fill in." Our preachers left, and I filled in for about 7 or 8 months. And then he came in and left shortly thereafter. And then in the first of December of 83, they said, "Would you stay and preach for us?" And I got it back in the blood. And so got out of the Navy after 10 years and began working with the church there. And as of 9/11/85, I've been a full-time gospel preacher and been blessed.
Fire in the bones.
Fire in the bones hasn't died out since.
Having had you as a teacher, of course, when I was here as a student, we went on a campaign together. And up to New York, as I recall.
Yes, Western New York.
And I got to see firsthand the fire in the belly. And boy, nobody will ever outwork you.
Well, I don't know any better. All the Bryant children were raised to work, and this is not a work, it's a passion. And
I remember you were, in fact, we had worked all day, and I was probably exhausted, but I remember we were staying up talking with whoever's house we were staying at, and you would joke the next day about bruises on your chest because your chin kept hitting. But boy, you were staying up and having that conversation and just still going to the late hours at night.
Well, had an audience. You give me an audience, and I won't stop. The shyness finally wore off, and so I get to do what I want to do. It's a work of pleasure, believe me.
Well, you are certainly, I know, appreciate it. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about the evangelism class here, and that's a challenge because we push the students.
Well, we get the opportunity to do that too, and that's it's a passion. So I haven't been a product of it. Started out the right way, and with the background and journey at Carnes, it was a wonderful. And then things happen. The Lord, I remember the first day of school, I told the Lord, I want to really be able to reach souls. Whatever you have to do, turn on the heat. I'm ready. And I didn't know it was going to always take those crooks and turns, but nevertheless, the Lord still has me here 50 years later.
The first time I heard you speak, Bill, was actually at West End. We were members there. I was a new Christian, and hearing you speak about, your experiences in life, I'm not sure there was a dry eye in that room afterward. But it hasn't been easy for you. You've had a lot of challenges.
Well, when you ask the Lord for a strong faith, you just don't get out of a textbook or just reading. The life comes at you. Yeah. And I was fortunate to have a lot of people who helped me through those times, and everything the Lord allowed, I guess, in principle, I asked for. I wanted to reach the highest level of being able to reach people. And when you've gone down sometimes a hard road of suffering, then you have certainly empathy, compassion, and pity for those people. And when you've learned lessons, you can't wait to just tell people there's a way. The Lord's the hope, and here's how he does it. So I've got taken a few courses at the School of Hard Knocks. Some I asked for, some I didn't, but the Lord's been in charge, and that's been fine for me.
Well, that's appreciate your journey and sort of again all that's included in that. What would you say is just because evangelism is such a passion for you, having seen how the world and how the worldview has changed over the last 50 years of that ministry, really, what is the greatest challenge today in reaching people, and how has that changed in your mind sort of over the last 50 years?
Well, for outside the church, there's very little knowledge of the Bible, so the starting point is so different. When I went to school here, the second year I mentioned, I went up to Monticello, and I would leave early and do Bible studies, and it was easy to get a Bible study with people then.
Okay.
And when I would have a Bible study, I'd turn to the book of Colossians, they could find it. Today, they have a hard time finding Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, or even a Bible. So if you're looking at people outside the church, there's not that knowledge base at all, if anything. Because of that, the world is a harder place, angrier place to live, and a lot of people know just enough about the church, unfortunately, Christianity, the Bible,
right.
And seeing bad examples of it, and there's not a strong taste for that, or fragrance or odor that we put out that people see that they want a part of. And so trying to find people out there who are interested usually only comes because something's broke. Usually the people, like I tell the students, that will come to you, or someone who's, the wheels have fallen off the car, and they don't know where else to turn. They're hoping Christianity is the answer. So as far as the knowledge and interest based in spiritual things, if people don't know the scriptures, they don't know how to live. So out there, you've got a lot of ignorance, and usually the people who come are pretty desperate. So those are easy to teach, but they're not.
I think that was one of your regular sayings, Flavel Yakeley, right? That was find a hurt and heal it.
Find a hurt and heal it. I believe that more so now than ever before, and that's usually what happens. But within the church, probably one of the things that's the hardest is people, they have this idea about how involved evangelism is, and think pretty much you've got to be a graduate of a school to be able to be successful in that. And so it scares people. Most people don't understand the sensitivity of politics and religion.
Sure. And
they understand, like in medicine, the first rule, do no harm. And they've probably seen examples in their own life of harm done by things said poorly, poor actions. And they don't want to be someone, at least, if I don't do anything, I won't do any harm. And so they're so afraid of doing wrong, they do nothing. And then trying to help people understand that, you don't have to know all of that. What you do know that's convincing, start there.
And sort of the worst thing to do would be to do nothing.
That's right. But see, people don't look at that as failure. But they need to, Matthew 25, a few places in Scripture where, you've got to stay busy. But it takes, you can get up and preach all day long, but you need to do that. But if people don't know how to do that, they're not going to do it. And so trying to get them involved is the hardest part. You pretty much have to take them by hand once they get in the water, so to speak, and see that, hey, I can do this. Then a lot of times the light comes on, the fire starts to build in the belly, and you just got to feed it. And so people are just so busy anymore. Everybody, they don't have the time that they used to have now, 1 or 2 jobs for each, father and mother, and then trying to keep up with the kids. It's just, it's a busy, busy world.
Yeah.
And it's getting an angry world, and people are looking, but unfortunately not looking in the right places.
Tell us about what's going on at Wooddale. Of course, I said Ott Road earlier, but Wooddale. Tell us what's going on there these days and some of the work that you're doing.
Well, we're active. One of the first things I believed in starting and teaching the students, you got to get people involved in the lives of other people. No congregation is going to be evangelistic that doesn't have strong fellowship first. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just makes sense. If you don't like deal with your own brethren, which is easier, some people may laugh at that, but it's going to be harder to be with somebody on the outside. And so you may have to shelve the idea of evangelism first, or look at the idea of evangelism. We got to convert the church first, to the idea of soul saving and get them used to, getting their hands dirty in the lives of other people. And pretty much you've got to get...
It's messy. I mean, getting involved with people.
It is, and there are fears there. Fear of being known. The closer you get to people, they're going to find out, well, you're not the perfect Christian either.
Right.
And so you have to worry about that fear, the fear of failure. You get involved, spend hours, with someone, then they quit. You got to deal with that, but you've got to know so much, the fear of change. There's a lot of fears there that keep people from doing that until you take them by the hand, get them out there and show how vital it is, and that, they have their own issues too, but Christianity not only works for you, but look what it's doing in the lives of other people. And when they see it work and see a family life that's broken, just tears your heart out and brings you to tears, and see what the Lord can do for them. Sometimes you realize, well, maybe that will work for me. You're supposed to know that already if you remember the church.
Right.
But sometimes I've seen so many Christians grow.
And you forget it over time.
You forget over time. Complacency is a hard thing to have to deal with. They start out with a, flame of glory, but Christianity doesn't take care of all the issues that probably brought you there to begin with, or maybe the initial hurt has been taken care of and you're content. And then somebody has to move you from that. And so visitation helps. So we've been active. We have evangelism class. I had a class started last night now, post-COVID, that we had for 2 or 3 years. 15 people were there. So, you have to be active in a visitation program and an evangelism program to help people.
You mentioned COVID. How did COVID impact you guys?
Well, like in most places, there's 2 strongly held convictions, about whether you should have the mask.
The right one and the wrong one?
Yes, and both are convinced they're right. So, we had to try our best to accommodate. We probably only went about a month or 2 without meeting regularly, but like in a lot of places, you learn how to do media. We
Right.
finally had to learn how we can get out there with a small amount of investment and start, sending our lessons out and recording our worship services. So we were, dragged, kicking and screaming to the 21st century and how to do things, and people that cared about us showed us how to do that. And so, we made that available. But then, we would try to have services for the people who didn't wear masks and service for those people who did. And then since May, it's been trying to get everybody together back up to running speed. And so,
do you feel like one of the things in a number of these interviews when I've talked with folks, getting people to come back, or there are some folks who have maybe got a little bit I don't want to call it complacent necessarily, but they certainly found that they didn't feel like they needed to come as often anymore, or they got used to, Sunday morning TV church, if you will. Has that impacted you guys?
Somewhat it has, because, man naturally follows the path of least resistance. Is there an easy way to do this? Well, this worked so well for the last year. Yeah. Do that, and every congregation, the leadership has to deal with that.
What do you think might be some of the long-term effects of people staying home, though, and trying to do church on their own? Well,
the church is a vibrant, living organism that requires people being with people. You can't serve the church at home. That's one thing. You look at Hebrews chapter 10, come together, learn how to stimulate and provoke one another, love and good works. Mm-hmm. It's easier to see that examples right there at the end of the pew. But if they're off somewhere in the distance, you never see them. You don't, the fellowship that's needed and the learning, because so much is learned not just from the preacher, but seeing people act and serve and take care of things. And so when you remove yourself from that, it's like, the coals, embers of a fire. You pull one piece out, what's going to happen? It's going to die out pretty quick. And so people got used and had an excuse initially of being able to be, take care of yourself and withdrawn and trying to get people back. And we've seen that. That's been what's happened over the course of the summer. Initially, we started back in May. We were only probably about half of what we were when we, stopped. Yeah. And so over the course of the summer, we've seen a slow, gradual increase in our attendance. Wednesday night suffered the most. We hardly had anybody back Wednesday night, but now finally, after the course of the summer, we've got people back and, used to, and they see the benefit of it again. Mm-hmm. They see what they missed.
Right.
Of being away. And so
because fellowship, as you said, even as a beginning to evangelism, it's a big part of being a Christian.
And now people are doing what they used to do before, make hospital visits, send cards, get involved again. And see, there was very little of that because, you're not getting the word, even though we would send out, have a website that listed people who are on the prayer list. Most people, didn't take advantage of that because you need that. You need that encouragement and being person to person, that bond. It's hard to rejoice with those who, have all that kind of stuff. You don't see people.
Yeah.
But now that people are finally back, the bad habits have, we've got a whole family one time, or that started coming back when they had a lot of kids and foster kids and involved now again, and they're there like they were when they left, always there every time the doors are open. But that's not the way things started. But people slowly, and outside of a couple of families, most people have come back. It's just a matter of getting them back up to running speed, as I call it.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break for a second, and we will be right back after this special message.
Hello, my name is Will Hanstein, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies in Knoxville, Tennessee. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 and 38, Jesus says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." In these two verses, Jesus communicates a very important concept to us. The problem is not with the amount of people who would be willing to obey the gospel. The problem is with the amount of people who would be willing to go and teach the gospel to them. So let me ask you a very important question. Have you considered becoming a gospel preacher? Here at Southeast, we have a no-cost, in-depth program of Bible study where you will learn how to communicate the gospel more effectively. At the end of your 2 years here, you will be awarded with a Bachelor of Biblical Studies degree, and we will help you find a sound congregation with which you can work. So let me ask you again, not have you considered becoming a gospel preacher, but would you consider becoming a gospel preacher? If so, visit our website at makingpreachers.com and fill out an application there. Come to Southeast, where preachers are made.
And we're back with Bill Bryant, the minister at the Wooddale Church of Christ. I said Ott Road earlier, but the name changed to Wooddale.
We still answer to both.
Okay, good. And a graduate from 1973, and also one of our professors here at Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. Great to be with you today, Bill.
Well, it's an honor.
All right. So I wanted to get this in. I know you teach a whole quarter on evangelism, and I know it's a long process. But if you were to, for the folks out there, because you've got such experience, and I know they'd love to hear the answer to, if you were to boil it down, like this one thing I want you to know, or this one technique or this one tool I want you to have in your tool bag that you can do it, whether you've been professionally trained or not, that you can go out and do evangelism, what would that be?
Well, one of the passages that we look at early on, the first week of instruction for the school, is from the book of Psalms, Psalm 63. Here's David in the wilderness, and he's talking about his pursuit of God. And he makes the statement, recorded in verse 3, "Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise you." And one of the things, unfortunately, a lot of Christians haven't thought about that much is, why are you a Christian to begin with? 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, we're told we're to proclaim the praises of the one who called us out of darkness in this marvelous light. And we had people who were trained, and preachers have to do this. Why are you here? It's not out of sense of duty. Why are you a Christian to begin with? Acts 2:47 talks about the church at Jerusalem. They were able to praise God. Mm-hmm. And so, can Christians do that? That's what, you have to develop interest in a Bible study before somebody will consent to a Bible study. And so I just think about if we had, if the average Christian out there can tell you, here's why I'm a Christian. Here's the reason why you need to seek the Lord. I know you got issues, but he's the answer. Let me tell you what he's done for me in this. Let me tell you what he's done for that. So if people would just increase their focus and start looking about the things that they do, why is the Lord taking these things away? Stop that and look at the way the Lord's blessed them, because everybody's been there. If you take the time to focus on the good stuff, when you answer the questions, why has all this happened to me, in the good way, and start thinking about he has blessed me or this, he has blessed me or that, then turn it loose. I think about John 9, the man born blind that Jesus healed. They made it pretty rough on him. And he kept being interviewed. He kind of got frustrated. Yeah. And he said, I've told you this before. One thing I know, I was blind, but now I see. If Christians could just take the one thing they're convinced of and just turn it loose and start telling the people, I know you're hurting, but it works. They can see in the Bible examples of how it's worked. Does it still work today? It's up to me and you and the members to tell people that.
So the best example or the best evangelism is Christian life,
Yes.
and sometimes the worst
Yes.
example is Christian life.
There are
And so
good
we really have
examples
to
of good
watch
examples and good examples of bad examples. But if you only had, for example, 20% of the church that knew how to teach, and the other 80% out there prospecting, so to speak, while they're getting people excited about, well,
Living
okay, if it works for you, could it work for me? The answer is yes. And then just send them to those people and know
So
how.
Paul saying, if I can be saved, you can be saved.
What's
right?
he done for me?
Yeah.
What is he doing for you? And when people hear Christians say that, he's still moving and acting in the lives of Christians today. Yes, he's doing that.
And I tell you, I love about the blind man is the more they pressed him, the greater his faith grew, right?
Yes, he did. And that will work for everybody. Those examples are there for a reason. Yeah. And so if people just start focusing, and that's where they've got to study, they've got to meditate. They got to look at the scripture and learn how. See, that's part of the problem. We want people to go out and conduct Bible studies with everybody else. A lot of these people don't even know how to do a Bible study on their own. They haven't learned on their own yet. How to really open the Bible and read on a regular basis and appreciate the joy of discovery of things they've learned that made a difference. When they learn that, you won't be able to shut them up.
Yeah, you open it for yourself. You see that verse or whatever that is. You feel like, am I the first one who's ever found this nugget of truth or read this?
Well, there's an expression I learned from my father, and I guess he had a lot to do with cultivating that spirit. But when he did come back to the church, because my dad was the type, either do it all the way or don't do it. Yeah. And so because he saw there were reasons why he wasn't able to do that, when he did come back, he was on fire, loved the school, contributed a lot of money to the school. But after several years, he would say, you follow me around for 90 days, I'll prove to you there's a God in heaven. But what he was doing, he saw the hand of God move in his life and the life of her family. He saw the good stuff. And there were a lot of people that were converted, not because my dad taught them, but he lit the fire. He got the interest started. Then he'd hook them up with somebody who could teach them. And the rest is history. And that's what the Bible should do for someone. It should cause them to, you try to shut me up. Right. where they know it, they believe it so much.
Fire in the bones.
Fire in the bones. Fire in the bones, indeed.
Good. What's it like to be a teacher at Southeast? What's that like? What's that experience like? How would you describe that?
It's the highlight of my year. It is. I mean, I love preaching. But, the students that you and others find here, and I know that if I can put that fire in their bones, the good that'll do. And I love the students. And I mean, I remember some of the students that I was with. I'm not trying to discount them, but, the potential they have and the potential today, especially a lot of young people, that a lot of older people who started out back then. But now there's so many young people whose lives are, so like clay that you can mold. And so to see these young men on fire, they get my passion. There have been a few times when members would come and watch me teach the class and say, "Whoa!" Because it's exciting to see what these young men want. They want that. Yeah. And so who could not get excited if you got fire already to see these young men and to know when they get it and what they can get here over the course of 2 years.
I was speaking with a student the other day who actually literally said that they were looking at another school of preaching and thought they were going there. They came and took your class, sat in on that class, and said, this is the place that we need to be. And so
it rubs off.
It's compelling.
It rubs off.
Well, good. What's your favorite thing about being a minister?
They get to see the hand of God work in the lives of people.
Yeah.
To see people and what's happened. I could go through the rest of the day and just tell you like some of the members that I know now and know what they were and to see it happen. It's not always easy, but it's like I saw the billboard one time, we catch them, the Lord cleans them. And he does. And that we're fishers of men to do that and to see his work and how he does it. In the way that he does it, somebody's still a mystery. It never stops being exciting to see, God change the lives of people, and he does that. So getting to see it, and that's what evangelism, that's why it keeps fueling the fire. You've always got fresh material and new stories of what people are doing. And so how could someone not be excited about seeing, God works in the lives of people? By faith, people did that, but the Lord can put that faith in there if you want to. It's not your ability that matters, it's your availability. You take a heart and say, Lord, here am I. You fill me up. He's going to do that and get in to see that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Why could you not be compelled to want to tell more people? So
it's you're such an energizing guy, Bill, and just being around you is energizing. What would you say to a young man out there right now who's considering going into, or an older man who's considering going into preaching based on, what they're seeing out there in the landscape today? Maybe they're concerned. Maybe they think, religion is becoming, people are becoming more and more hostile to preachers and that sort of thing. What kind of encouragement would you give them?
Well, they need to realize the world is pretty dark, but, if I know my history correctly, the first century wasn't easy. Because what did the Lord do? The church grew by leaps and bounds at the time when they had the bullseye on the target for the Roman world. They despised the church, but it still grew. So when you got more and more people who become disenthralled and upset, you ask the average person, hey, do you trust the government? do you trust people? I mean, they've lost hope. Where's the hope? So it's true that the world's getting dark, but I think more and more people have this disgust for what's going on. Is there anybody who knows anything? Well, the answer is God knows this because you turned your back on him. And so for a young man who's considering that, I'd say, you got to understand what's in it. Learn everything. Don't just jump until you're ready to do it because it is hard. Mm-hmm. It is you've got to have this virtue called patience to be able to wait to see God's timetable work over the course of time. And then you've got to be people only do as well as they're taught. So if they've got this support, especially family or wives if they're married, and the children to come to a place like this, understand, first of all, know what you're getting into. Count the cost. Yeah. It's not going to be easy. Do you have the kind of makeup that you can handle that? Because as a preacher, not everybody's going to love you. That's one field guarantee you where you're not going to keep everybody happy. Can you handle that? So I'm just saying there needs to be some maturity there and need to be some honest evaluation from people there that know you to see whether or not you have the stomach for it, and whether or not you have the capacity and the patience to be patient with people and be able to suffer with them. Preach the word, be instant. You got to have the long suffering with it. And do you have those kind of qualities? So you've got to make sure that you're teachable and also know that you can have what I call stickability, that you're going to be able to hang with it because it's not going to be easy. But
you don't want to start the race or the building and not be able to finish.
No, because that looks bad. I mean, because when someone who comes and doesn't finish it, then they become so disenchanted, and others who got involved, they got all excited, all worked up. If you don't follow through, that's discouraging to people. So first of all, just make sure that you're ready to count the cost and you're ready to do that. You have the support network of people, who can do that for you to make sure you carry on through.
So what about to the guy out there who's slugging it out week in, week out, and it's Monday, and he's just poured his entire heart and soul out on Sunday, and he's having that Elijah moment of, I don't know how I can go on. That's enough. Lord, take me, right? How can he be, what would you say to him to encourage him and also to be, how he can be more effective in evangelism?
Well, one of the things you have to do, you're always because when a preacher leaves school, he's got all these sermons to prepare. They need this, they need this, they need that. But the first person that has to be converted by your sermons is yourself. If you don't feed your own faith first, you'll die on the vine. So you've got to make sure you spend time with your own quality devotional time, because that's going to help provide the framework whereby you can handle.
So many people forget that.
They don't. They just get too busy. So you got to make sure you're spending your time wisely, taking care of your own heart and understand and appreciating the joy of discovery for your own faith. And then I would say get mentors. Find people. That's what I had. I would have quit long ago when I got back into it. There's a guy by the name of Clifford Reel that used to be a director of the school in active teaching. He was a preacher in Oneida, Tennessee. I don't know how many times I'd call from Cincinnati and said, you got a day next week? Because I'm coming down. And I'd spend the whole afternoon with him, and I'd pour my heart out to him. And he'd send me back up the road. I had a better idea. So I'm just saying everybody needs mentors, people who can encourage you. And there are a lot of preachers around who would do that. And some of the older preachers need to make sure that the younger people moving in, hey, I'm here for you. Because there are people, I would gladly do that. I know Steve would do that. So I'm just saying for those young
Sure.
person, the way to combat the Elijah complex is to know there are other good people out there, and there are.
When I moved down to Clover to start help start that congregation, David Farr was such a benefit to me and took me to lunch. And of course, I remember at our first lunch, he said, "This one's on me. After this, it's Dutch."
Yeah, that's what it should be. But go back to the School of Preaching and Lectureship. Go to things that would stir the fire.
Right.
You can't, if you're sitting there in the office and it's always just about you and them, it's easy to be discouraged. So you need to see, other examples of other congregations working what they're doing, and learn what you need to do and get back with it. So you say there's always encouragement available, but you got to ask for it. So first, in review, feed your own soul first, and then be around others and, choose and develop a relationship with older men, mentors who've been successful, who can tell you I see what the problem is. You just need to go back and do this. I had that, and everybody, it's there. And keep asking the Lord for open doors for people who will come and do that for you.
That's wonderful. Tell us why Southeast? If somebody's out there considering, I know there are a lot of good choices out there in the world, but what do you, your experience with East Tennessee School of Preaching and Southeast as both an alum and as a faculty, sum it up. Why do you think somebody should come to Southeast?
Well, there's been a word that's been popularly used and truthful over the years, and regardless, there's been a lot of different directors that have come in and left for different things. But the one word that I see that's still there is the word balance. Because if you get your balanced life, because sometimes you overextend here and underextend there, things mess up. But this school has the balance. When you come here, you're going to know how to defend the truth, but you'll also know how to build churches. You'll know how to be, and having Carnes here is a great laboratory of how things can work. And the history of the congregation here. So you get to see how to stand up, and you need to be like Paul and stand there like Athens and Mars Hill and defend the truth. Just here we go. We're going to take care of it. But also know how to be able to, in a positive way, be able to get people started and build lives, build families, and build churches. And I don't know of any other place that's ever done that as well as what this place has. And I know it's God answering the prayers, because the leaders and elders here have always been, having to make a decision who to get. They've always got people here who come in and make sure that balance is there. And by teachers who have, I notice I'm only teaching one class a year, but, I see the interaction between the staff and the students. I see the affection that's there. It's not just, I know how, like in a military type, you don't have that here. You got people come in, students that are sitting at the feet of people who really care for them, and you feel that, you know that. And you get to see from practical experience, people have been there, they've done that, they've built churches, they've seen churches thrive, like, be an elder here, an elder there. They know what their problems are and know what the solutions are. So here you get the best of, you get a great camaraderie that exists here that doesn't always exist other places, I know from experience. But if you want to come and have your place be in a place where it can learn, a garden that's fertilized with all the good stuff, this is the place to do that. So if you come here and blow it, it's not because of the failing of the school. If you've got a hungry heart that wants to get it, this is the place to do it.
Another one of our mottos is preachers aren't born, they're made. What would you say to that?
Well, normally we think somebody's a born preacher. They got the gift of gab. They can get up and talk on any subject for any length of time.
Right.
I could never do that. That was probably the shyest kid who ever graduated, from Carnes High School.
Hard to believe.
And when I came here, I got so nervous. I would literally get sick before every chapel talk I would have to do. Literally, 6 months after I started, Brother Finley pulled me inside and said, I'm just not sure this is going to be healthy for you, because you still get sick. Your right leg shakes like a reed in the wind. I said, Brother Finley, I think I can overcome the nerves. Just give me time. So I didn't have the gift of gab, but I learned. They put the heart there and turned it on. And so you're not born with it, but you can learn it, because everybody will do as well as they're taught and learn and challenged.
Yeah.
And so if somebody could take me and make me a preacher out of me, as scared as I was, at a 50th year high school class reunion, people were shocked that I had become a preacher and preached all those years. And I said, the church made me.
What a blessing.
They brought out the best in me. So it could happen again and again, and it does.
But if the fire is there, if the energy is there, if the heart is there, if it's good soil, right, then God can do amazing things.
He does. He does. Yeah. Certainly.
Wow.
That's what's so exciting, like I asked before, and you see it work. It still works. And believe me, when people realize we're heading towards the cliff here, they're going to look out for somebody who's got it, who's standing fast, who dug in, and that's what the school is, and that's what the church should be. And so it's a great place to come and see how to avoid the fire, and be able to take care of people.
Well, and I imagine we're going to have folks who just sign up to audit your class after this interview.
Fine with me. Bring them on.
Good. Well, you are literally one of the finest people that I know in this world, Bill, and just such
I've got a few family members that might offer a little disagreement, but thank you, brother. Thank you for that.
And it's a true treat for me today to get to sit down with you and chat about things that I love, evangelism, the school, and certainly our friendship. So we appreciate it. We appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you so much for the honor coming here and talking about the school and getting to spend more time with you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again for joining us today on Southeast Speaks, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, be sure to like, share, and why not subscribe so you can get notified when we have interviews with students, faculty, alumni, and supporters of Southeast. Thank you, and have a blessed day.